Okay, we're going to start our lesson on eclipses. Again, this is Chris Troha, and this is astronomy class. So, what is an eclipse? Eclipse is when one object, celestial object, casts its shadow on another one. There are two eclipses that we worry about: the solar eclipse, and this is when the sun appears to be blocked if you're standing on Earth. Looks like the sun is getting dark. And a lunar eclipse is when there's a full moon that appears to be blocked. That's when the Earth is casting its shadow on the moon. So, a solar eclipse is when the sun appears to be blocked by the moon, but what's actually happening is the shadow of the moon is falling on the Earth, and the pathway across the Earth is if you're standing in that pathway of where the shadow is going across the Earth, then it's going to look like it's blocking out the sun. Here's a couple of images from most recent solar eclipse here in Oregon, August 21st, 2017. You may have been around for it. So there's some amazing pictures from, not all from here, but from around the area. This one's a time lapse here on the left. So pretty amazing. So I want to just point out this little diagram here. Obviously, this is not to scale. The sun's much, much bigger than the Earth. But the sun casts its light. A lot of times when we draw light rays, we just go from the left and right side. So it comes in and it hits this side of the moon, hits that side of the moon, and so this edge of the sun is casting a shadow over on this side of the Earth. And then this edge of the sun is hitting the moon, and there's a shadow from the moon on this side of the Earth. So that's called the penumbra. That's when kind of a half shadow. But where those shadows are completely blocking off, where the moon is completely blocking off the sunlight, and that's where that shadow here is. That's the umbra here, and that's where we'd get that total eclipse. If you're standing over on this side in the penumbra, then you're getting a partial eclipse. So we can see that here, the sun, and here, if you're completely in the shadow of the moon, that's a total eclipse. The sun would look blacked out. And then if you're over here in one of the partial eclipse is when you're over here in the penumbra. Now, what's a lunar eclipse? Lunar eclipse is when the moon is the thing that's being covered by a shadow, in this case being the shadow of the Earth on the moon. Notice that this is not any of our phases of the moon because of it's not on the left or the right. It's going across the top, all right. Here's a very cool time-lapse picture. Notice that the moon doesn't get completely black. It turns this reddish color here because some of the sunlight is actually bending around the Earth, and so those long red wavelengths are actually still able to hit the moon. So why don't we have solar and lunar eclipses every single time there's a new and a full moon? Well, what is the moon's phase when the solar eclipse occurs? Or when the lunar eclipse occurs? During a solar eclipse, that can only happen during a new moon because the sun and the moon and the Earth are in a line with each other with the moon in between. So that can only happen during a new moon. How about a lunar eclipse? That can only happen during a full moon. Lunar eclipse occurs, and that's when you have the sun and then the Earth and the moon. So why don't we have those every time? Why every new moon or every full moon? We talked about this in the last video. The moon actually has a little tilt to it. It's got a 5-degree angle compared to the Earth going around the sun. So here's the Earth, if we were looking at the Earth, and the moon's going around the Earth. Now, the appearance to us is that the sun's going around the Earth as well. But there's that 5-degree difference. So in order for an eclipse to actually happen, these nodes here at the full moon and the new moon, they have to be nearly aligned. And the moon must be either a new moon or a full moon. This is a really cool image that I pulled off of GreatAmericanEclipse.com. And so these are, even though it says once in a lifetime opportunity, there's opportunities that you can see eclipses more than once. Notice this one here, the August 21st, 2017. That's the one that came right down through Oregon. And I was actually in Canby when I saw it. And the next one here is one that's going to be down here coming up through Ohio, Indiana, down through Texas on April 8th, 2024. And so there's, if you go to this greatamericaneclipse.com, you can find out where all the eclipses are. Now, a little bit about the eclipse cycle. Every year we have at least 2 lunar eclipses. And lunar eclipses and solar eclipses always come in pairs. Lunar eclipses can be seen everywhere because anywhere, as long as it's nighttime, you're going to see the moon getting covered by the shadow of the Earth. It doesn't matter where you are on the surface of the Earth, it's going to cover the moon. But solar eclipses are only a very small path. Because the moon is so small compared to the light of the sun, it only covers that very small path. So if we go back to this, notice that these little pathways as the shadow of the moon passes across the Earth. All right, so we're going to move into the specifics on the moon on the next video.